Hi everyone. What this Hummingbot API is about, basically we can manage accounts, we can have multiple credentials for each account, we have a Hummingbot API portfolio tracking, market data, you can get candles, order book, prices, funding rates. You can also trading. You have some browsers for trading. You can place orders, cancel orders, manage positions, plus backtesting and more complex things, deploy and manage bots, right? So with Hummingbot API right now, you can do all this stuff. That is really cool because if you remember before, Hummingbot was just a CLI. Now you can orchestrate and do things on top of the CLI. When you get started, you usually use the deploy repo. Just to explain the difference of that deploy repo that you probably will say, why I have deploy, why I have Hummingbot API, all that stuff. The Hummingbot API repo has all the code from this fast API, right? So this is, let's say, Hummingbot API. Then we have another repo that is called Dashboard. That is this other repo that is in Streamlit. And then we have another one that is Deploy that merges these two, like merges the dashboard and Hummingbot API. So that's why we have this deploy repo. So deploy repo contains Hummingbot API and contains dashboard, right? And what we're going to see today is another one that I'm working on that is called Hummingbot MCP. That right now is not integrated in deploy, but you can still use it. Here appears still called like backend API, but right now we reframe it to Hummingbot API. So what about this repo? If you go to a Docker Compose, you will see that we have the Hummingbot API that uses this official image of Hummingbot API. And we have this MQX, that is a broker. This is the service that we use to communicate the bots. It's a protocol called MQTT. You can send messages through a topic, or you can trigger events. So it's like a very good protocol when you are using IoT, all that stuff. How we are using this in the bots right now, what you can do with this protocol, with MQTT, basically when the bot starts, if it has connected MQTT, you can send the basic commands of start, stop, status, history. All the commands can be sent through MQTT. And also the V2 strategies uses this protocol to send updates of the status. So what it means is that every 1 second it will publish through MQTT the P&L, the current trading volume, all the metrics related to the trading are published through MQTT by the bots. And this Hummingbot API consolidates all the reports from all the bots that you have deployed. So it's like you can have, I don't know, 5 bots running. All of them are going to send the updates through MQTT, and Hummingbot API will consolidate everything and give you the status of those bots. So for that is this service. And then we also have this Postgres database that is where we are storing the orders, the portfolio, all the stuff over time. If you want to check it out, here I have this connection in PyCharm. You can see this. So here you have in the tables available for the database. As you can see, we have account states that register well, it's not running. So as you can see, these account states will have a record of the timestamp, master account, and connector name for each of the records and with an ID. And in the token states, we'll give you the state of each token, the units, the price, because we collect the price too, and the value in USD. Why this is important, or why this is useful for you? Because you can define a frequency, let's say 5 minutes, and for all the accounts that you have connected, every 5 minutes, we're going to get all your units, the current prices, and tell you this is the amount in US dollars that you have of each of the tokens. And this applies if you have, I don't know, 20 accounts, it will get the 20 accounts. Then we have the trades. This is only the trades for trades executed via the API. Then we have the orders table. Also, if there are errors, we are also logging the errors. That this bot runs is really interesting because we keep track when you deploy a bot. We are going to keep track of when you started the bot, and at the end, we are going to tell you what was the last state. So basically, in the last performance, you can see like, well, the logs, the P&L, the whatever. So well, basically, just to summarize, this API will give you like more like a professional grade usage of the system, where you can manage multiple accounts, when you can deploy different strategies in the same server, like all that stuff. Well, all for free, all open source. So well, now it's time to run it. Let's run the API. You can run it from Docker or you can run it from source. I'll run it from source now. You see it says Hummingbot API version status running. And if you go to the docs, we can see the actual endpoints that you have available. You can play around with it. It's very, very interesting, all the things that you can do. Actually, there is a very good YouTube series that I created where I explain like the routers and all that stuff. This Hummingbot API, like at the end, that is like code examples. I even created like how to send reports through Telegram using like the library and all the stuff. So well, it's very convenient and very easy to use. pip install like this. Pip install Hummingbot API client and see how easy is like client.portfolio get state, client.connectors, list connectors. Well, it's like very, very oriented to how these routers are created to, right? So well, up to this is all the presentation about what is Hummingbot API, why we created, all that stuff. What I'm going to present now is ways to interact with this API, because once we have the API, we can either write a program to deploy bots automatically. For example, well, in the example of this YouTube in series, in this one, I show how to deploy automatically 2 grids. So well, if you want to check it out, that will be one way of deploying, right? With this Hummingbot API, we can have either writing a script API client, that will be like one way, using dashboard, that let me start it so you can see it. It will be here. So running the dashboard will let us, this part is mocked, so it's not an actual thing. If someone wants to add something, it's like a mock-up of what you can like actually build. But basically here in the dashboard you can see if you have instances running, if you wanna deploy an instance, how to deploy it. Like you can pick, I want this config, I want to put the name, this name to the bot and deploy it, and it will run. You can manage the credentials here. Well, this is sometimes happen, you guys just need to refresh it. It's because it's Streamlit. You can create the account, like, I don't know, create new account, test2. I have this test2 account. Now I want to add a credential to this test2 account for the connector, whatever. So, well, this interface is one interface that you can use to interact with the bot. You can get the portfolio, the trading. Well, here you can do trading too. This is really cool. Before it wasn't possible to trade with Hummingbot. Now you can trade with Hummingbot. That's like without running actually the application. This uses the routes of trading, right? But here you can pick, I wanna trade from the master account on this exchange. It will get the candles, it will get the order book, and you can place orders or do whatever you want. You also get the funding rate if it's a perpetual connector. And well, basically this can be useful for rebalance your account, all that stuff. And here at the end you have the account balance, the positions that you have open, if you have some, the active orders, the order history. Well, you have a bunch of this stuff to review. These archive bots shows like the bots that you run in the past, if they have database or not. This part probably is not working very well, but well, if someone wants to fix it, you can run it. It shows the P&L of the total bots. This is something that we need to work on. And also you have like some strategy, some parts to generate configs for the strategies. For example, Grid Strike is a strategy that I always recommend to start with because it's a simple grid, but you get the sense of how to use a tool like Hummingbot that lets you create any strategy in a long run, because here you are not going to take too much risk. You're going to put how much money you want to spend on the grid and what is the config of the grid, and the bot will just start as a simple grid strategy. Anyone knows how a grid works, so it's very simple to get started. So I will recommend to start with this and then we'll continue with others, right? But well, this by default, this page will load for you the last 30 days on an interval of 30 minutes based on the maximums and minimums. The percentiles will determine the limits of the grid. For example, here's suggesting a long grid for WorldCoin. So basically with this configuration, you can pick or you can modify, for example, end price 1.5, let's say that we want to put it. So you can modify the range that you want to place a grid. You just put the number, the config that you want, you upload it, and then it's ready to deploy here, right? So that is a basic usage of the API through the dashboard. As Grid Strike, you have other strategies like, I don't know, MACD and Bollinger. This is a directional strategy. You have a bunch of these strategies, so you can pick the one that you like and experiment with this, right? But today, what I'm going to show you is this MCP stuff. That is basically what you will probably are looking for to understand, to see what is, all that stuff. So the last thing will be using AI agent that has access to Hummingbot MCP. This is MCP, right? They set it up as standard to present this information to the LLMs. Basically, as well as SU is saying, it's like an API, yeah. It's like an API, but the main difference is that you don't use it as an API. Instead, it exposes to an LLM the functionalities that it has, so the LLM can call it easily. So for Hummingbot MCP, if you go here, it's very, very straightforward. We have this Hummingbot client that basically uses the Hummingbot API client. And here's where we have the server. So to set it up, the easiest way is to use like Docker, because you don't need to clone the repository, you don't need to clone anything. You just need to add this, and it will basically clone a Docker image that has this MCP and will run it. So it's like very straightforward. You don't need to clone anything, nothing. Just add this part and we work with Docker directly. And if you want to test it from source because you want to have more control or modify some things, you will need to add this part. You need to have UB installed and you need to point to the repo where the MCP is. So let's configure this right now. So I will show you how to do the configuration. I have already configured, but let's do it again. So in this case, I'm using Cloud Code. You can set it up with Gemini CLI if you want. That Gemini CLI is free. and also supports MCP. So whatever you want to use is okay. There is no problem from that. My recommendation always use Docker. You don't need to manage any dependency, you need to install anything. Just having Docker, it will work as it is, just with one. What we need to do here is to go and modify this Claude.json. This code that says MCP servers is what we need to copy on here. That is basically the same stuff. Okay? So well, this is what we need to have in order to have it configured. What you can do is to copy the one from Docker, and will also work like in that case. So if we go now to the terminal and we run like Claude, and then I run MCP, you will see that says MCP Hummingbot connected. So if you enter, you can see the details, and you can see all the tools that we have like available, right? So all these tools are available for the bot to use, and this is what was the information that the AI has to use it. So for example, I want to set up a connector. If you don't pass any parameter, it will be like, okay, the user is trying to set up a connector, but I don't know which is the one. So I will list all the available connectors and see that it says the available exchange are these, and these are the current accounts that you have and the keys that you have connected already, right? So if I say I want to connect to Hyperliquid Perpetual, let's say, right? In case that I am expressing that I would like to connect to Hyperliquid Perpetual, it will tell me, okay, this is the information that you need to actually connect to Hyperliquid Perpetual. You see? It says you need to pass your API key, your API secret, and tell me if you want to use a vault or not. So it's really cool because you can see how the MCP understands what you are trying to, well, the AI understands what you're trying to do, and based on that, it will call this function with the necessary arguments to make it work. So that is for setup connector. Other things that you can do is, for example, tell me what's my balance in Binance Perpetual, let's say. It says 17.45, and here the MCP says the same thing. Your portfolio is this, okay. So what are other things that I can do? I can say, okay, what's the current price of Sol, BTC, ETH, and XRP? You see, it's using the MCP. So the main difference is that now the agent, instead of understanding or seeing this information through third party or through other sources, is able to understand, okay, Hummingbot can provide this data for me. I can say, what about the funding rates? If I ask for the funding rates, it can provide the funding rates? Yes. It will call the three tools of getting the funding rate and getting that information back to me. As you can see here, I'm asking, this is the funding rates of Binance Perpetual, and I can say, compare it with OKX Perpetual and Hyperliquid Perpetual. Note that the pairs in Hyperliquid USD instead of USDT. So Hyperliquid has lower funding, whatever. So now let's see if we can open a trade, right? Can you set up the leverage for Sapien USDT in 50x and then short it for 50 USD? The leverage right now is 20. Set to 50, perfect. We can see it in 50 now. But as you can see, it plays it as short for me. It's like I just give the instruction and he did it to me. It's nice. Mike is asking, can find arbitrage opportunities? Let's see. I would say, can you compare the price of BRL, of USDT, BRL between Binance and OKX? Is a Brazilian real. An OKX. Use the order book query because it has access to the order book. So as it has access to the order book, it can check the order book. You see, it's getting the order book of Binance. It gets the order book of OKX, and it will match and see if there is any arbitrage opportunity. Probably, if you want to do arbitrage, you're not going to use probably AI for this, unless you are really unstructured and you don't want to code everything. But these are things that you can code and will be more efficient if you code it. But the good news are it can find the arbitrage. It can have access to the order book. It can do a lot of things for you. So here we have this order. Now we can say what are my active positions. As you can see, I can also get the position. I have this Sapien USDT short, the entry price, the leverage, the PNL. Can you increase the short by 50 USD? You see now I have $100 of short. For me, one of the most important things, or one of the most useful stuff that we're going to have with MCP is when creating and configuring strategies, right? I created one tool that helps you like discover or explore the strategy and understand what parameters it has available to use. So let's use it. For example, I would like to understand how grid strike works. An output says grid strike is an advanced grid trading strategy that places order at specific price levels within a defined range. If you want to understand something special, it's like how many grids this strategy will create. Just to understand a little bit about the controller, right? How many grids it will create. I don't know. You can ask questions about the code, so it can explain you what it's actually doing. 200 levels. Well, we'll do all this explanation. So now let's say, let's say that I would like to create a config for, let's continue use the Sapien. For Sapien USDT, what values do you recommend? I would like to get the 1 minute candles of the last day and use them to set up the grid. It's taking a lot of like tokens, and the LLM can process that amount of tokens, so I will probably need to get less time. But well, it's getting like 15 minutes candles. It created the Sapien grid log, so it already created the configuration. I had things that I don't like here. For example, I would say I want to have the take profit in 0.00 this percentage. Then also the mean amount quotes has to be $6 I would like, and the total amount quote has to be 300, let's say. Leverage 50. Well, it created the config. As you can see, it defined the end price, all this stuff. Can you deploy that bot with master account? You say bot deployed successfully. As you can see, we were able to create the config and deploy the bot. What Sue is mentioning is something that the LLM can have, like hallucinations. But that's the whole point of MCP. Is like if you are defining very well the instructions, the LLM should not hallucinate. Is what the MCP is going to do, right? So if you see here, all these instructions are used to avoid hallucinations. It's like the hallucination happens when it does not have context or information, real information about what the task should be, and it will try to predict what the hell can be something that fits into that. But once you have a detailed instructions on how to use that, it will work well. I didn't find, it's like I tested to trade a lot with it already, and it never failed what I asked for. Let me show you, for example, the ones that is like for place an order. Place an order. It has all the information. It knows how the order amount is always in base currency. If you want to use USD values and add the dollar sign. So, and inside this, I have a lot of like code reviewing or executing this stuff. So I think that I disagree that it can hallucinate that bad. And also, you always see the arguments that it's going to use before calling the tool. So I can say, what's the status of my bot? Yeah, it's like you can now even get the status of the bots that you have running. So well, that's basically a brief introduction of how you can actually use Hummingbot API without needing a UI. In this case, as you can see, we are just the MCP to interact with Hummingbot API, and it's having a decent performance. I can also say, cool, now stop the bot. We should see that the longs are stopped. Yeah, perfect. The longs were removed. The bot is stopped. If we refresh this, we'll probably see. Okay, you see it stopped the bot. It archived the bot. If we go to archive bots, we should see Sapien. You see Sapien grid bot is here. Basically, it's very robust. Like all the workflows are like very solid. We are constantly testing because this is the first iteration of the MCP. So David, for example, is testing this in Gemini. I tested on Claude, and Claude, well, is very good like for everything. But that's a very good question, Linux. You can use N8N with Hummingbot because we have the MCP. So N8N can connect to the MCP. We can also create like an N8N component. That will be probably very massive for Hummingbot. But if you want to use it N8N with AI and this MCP, you can connect this MCP as part of N8N. So yeah, you can do it. Have a great weekend. Bye bye.